Hey, I love it when YouTube actually works. When it actually starts, it's so good. And I even started on time. I didn't even have to worry about doing this real quick. Don't need a bunch of notifications. Thank you guys. So excited to have the live stream today. I've been seriously looking forward to this like all week. This is the best part of my Friday. Seriously. As you can see, I have a different background. I have done some remodeling since the last time we spoke. And you'll probably also notice that new mic. So you should be able to hear me a lot better. And I swear to goodness that I have a new webcam as well. So apparently it is very temperamental. I'm going to, don't mind me, I'm a professional. I know exactly what it is that I'm doing at all times. Okay, so some different changes, some new things since last time I talked with you guys. You can see I have a new background. That is going to bother me. It keep going in and out. So apparently I just can't move with my new webcam. It's an HD webcam, so that way it doesn't look super grainy. But as you can see, I've moved around. I got two beautiful new to me bookshelves, and I've filled them with pretty much every single book that I have. So excited. You can see the sound panels over on the concrete wall. That is where my studio is. Let's see if, don't mind the mess. Ta-da! So that is where I'm going to be doing a lot of my future YouTube videos. Took a little bit of remodeling, but finally got it set up and got the sound panels. Got sound panels behind my laptop as it is right now, so that way my voice doesn't project quite as much. So enough about that. I'm super excited for today's questions. Also had a big announcement. I think I've already kind of mentioned it in passing on the last live stream, but I am in the process of building the Bard's Storytelling Academy. It's going to be on the platform Teachable, and it is going to be the first course is going to be launching in the next couple of weeks. Very, very excited about that. It is going to be, the first course is going to be how to start your fantasy novel in an hour. And this is with no experience. You can quite literally start a fantasy novel in an hour with the tools that I'm going to be giving you in that course. That is coming up the next couple of weeks. And you will be getting emails about that, or I'll message it on, I'm going to be blasting it everywhere. So if you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you're going to know about it. You can also subscribe to my website and get three free worksheets, and also find out about when it's going to go live. So enough about that. As excited as I am about that, that is not why you are here. You guys are here for the questions. And speaking of questions, if you have any, the chat is open. So please feel free. I have a list of questions that I look for and try and find for you guys to try and answer things that I think will be very interesting and beneficial to you. But if you have something specifically, I want to hear from you. So comment over there. All right, diving into our first question of the day. It is, when did you begin writing, and how did you find the genre that best suits you? So I started writing, I didn't take writing seriously until I was 16. But around 13, I kind of got into the whole like RPG scene, and specifically doing Lord of the Rings and like Narnia. So I think it was like Tolkien Gateway and NarniaFans.net were the two that I was on. But when I was 16 is actually when I did it, and actually started moving forward with writing my fantasy stories. I don't know if you guys can tell. I've had like real caffeine today, and so like I'm just like, yeah. Um, you can find the genre that best fits you by looking at what you typically read. A lot of people say you write what you know, which is true, or you should stick with writing with what you know. I also believe that you write what you read because that's really the genre that you're most familiar with. Now, if you read a wide range of genres, then you kind of have more to pull from in determining which one is going to be a good fit for you and your story. But it really comes down to brainstorming what your story is going to be about. What is it? What genre does it actually fit into? It could be romance. It could be science fiction. As you can see behind me, this whole second shelf here is pretty much Lord of the Rings. That's all that shelf is. Up above, that's all Dune, except for that one right there. That one's called the Firebird Trilogy. Fantastic sci-fi novel. Up here's Ted Dekker. He's got a lot of so he's a Christian author, but he writes psychological thrillers that will just blow your mind. I got some Stephen R. Lawhead down here, some Frank Peretti. I got some Brian Davis right here. These are my worksheets that I sell in the bundle. And down in that area, yeah, that's Orson Scott Card. Yeah, I said it right. So as you can see, I have mainly fantasy and science fiction novels with some psychological thrillers in there as well. That is, unsurprisingly, what I tend to write. So when you are in the process of figuring out what your story is and kind of what you want your story to be about, think about what genre do you read? What genre are you most familiar with? And then kind of go from there, because the genre that you're most familiar with is going to be the one that you're typically going to gravitate towards anyway. So that's really all that I have for that question. Is if you want to expand what you write, you expand what you read. So we'll move on to the next question here. At what point during the book writing process should you know how it's going to end? I'll be honest. When I sat down and I wrote my 50,000 words in January this year, I had no idea how it was going to end. I didn't even have a plot. I just started writing and I pantsed it. I just wanted to see what happened. And in doing so, it wasn't until I was about halfway to 3/4 of the way through the first draft that I actually kind of came up with the idea of where I wanted it to go. And then that's how I figured out, it's actually going to be, there's going to be a sequel to this, because the story is just, it's too big for just this one thing. Sorry, technical difficulties, trying to figure it out. When I did figure it out, it made it a little bit easier. But at the same time, it was what goes in between those, because I was about halfway done, and when I got the ending in mind, it was kind of like, okay, but what now? So some people are not able to do that. Some people, they have to know the beginning and the middle and the end before they even start writing. That is where the benefit of the milestone method comes into play. You've heard me talk about the milestone method. It's the method that I developed for my writing process. It's available in the worksheets that you get when you sign up for my website, which is free, by the way. And it talks about you just draw a horizontal line, 3 big marks that mark the beginning, the middle, and the end. And then you create those smaller event tick marks, and those are where you can kind of span the entire story and flesh it out with a very loose outline. The loose outline worked best for me. Excuse me. And that is how I've been moving forward with my story. Now, everyone's going to be different. People, they have to do the whole thing. They write a book for their book. More power to them. I can't do that. So if you want to know when that you should, like when you should know the ending of your book, just start writing. Because honestly, by the time it's going to change from the first draft to the second draft anyway. So how you end it here is going to be roughly how you might have it set up in the next chapter or in the second draft. So the most important thing is to be writing your story and then figuring it out as you go. You don't necessarily need to know the end beforehand. Okay. Sorry, that was probably pretty loud. Third question is, what are the benefits of writing in a journal or diary? Now, I love this question because it's not story or fiction related. It's actually real life application stuff. When it comes to journaling, you will find out that I am very much a proponent of people journaling. There is so much that you can learn about yourself through journaling. And I've done a video on that. Now, if I remember correctly, it should pop up. I'll have a card after this, but it'll be up here somewhere, hopefully, about journaling. I did a video about that because it's so important. Writing is kinesthetic, and it allows your brain to process things that it cannot otherwise process verbally. And when you journal, those deeper heart things will come out, and it is is incredibly healing. It can be incredibly healing. It can also be incredibly painful, because when you're being vulnerable and you have a safe place to do that, and if that journal or diary is that safe place, then a lot of that pain is going to come out. And what it forces you to do is actually forces you to deal with it. It forces you to acknowledge it. Writing and journaling are the mirrors of the soul. And when you expose your heart and your soul like that, it means that you can't really deny it anymore. That can be the hardest thing. That can seriously be one of the hardest parts, and why some people don't want to even do it, because it's so painful. Journaling has helped me throughout my life be able to process different emotions, different feelings, thoughts that I wasn't sure were even there, insecurities, painful memories. And in doing that, it allowed me to process those emotions. First, it made me aware of the emotions, like the depth of the emotions. And then it allowed me to face them. And once I faced them, I had the choice. I can either deny what these emotions are, or I can choose to sit in them and not. And the difference between sitting in it and just like dwelling in it is that you're sitting in it for a time. Dwelling in it is like that's your permanent home. It is a stop on the road to recovery and to healing. That is the power of journaling. So when you journal, you have to sit there, you have to process the emotions, you have to acknowledge the pain, you have to acknowledge the hurt. And then when you've done that, you stand up, you dust yourself off, and you keep moving forward. It doesn't mean that the pain is gone. It just means that you're not going to dwell in the pain. You're not going to let the pain define you. That is why I highly recommend and advocate for people journaling. Even if you don't know how to journal, you just start. You just write. And I hate the term "just write." So here's some homework for you. If you choose to accept it, this message will not self-destruct, however, because it would mean ruining my bard cave, and I would just be very, very sad. Go out to, let's say, your local bookstore, Barnes and Nobles, if that's the closest one. Find a journal, buy one off of Amazon, doesn't matter. Go to the dollar store, buy a journal, and sit down, write the day and the date. So like Sunday and then the date. And then start with how you're feeling. And if you don't know how you're feeling, write, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know how to process this. I don't know how to journal. I have no idea. Start with that. Because what you'll find is that as you start writing, you don't have to worry about grammar. You don't have to worry about spelling. You don't have to worry about syntax. You don't have to worry about whether the period or the comma is in the correct place. It literally does not matter. You could have an entire run-on sentence for a page or 2 pages. The point is that you are able to process your emotions, whatever they are. And if you don't know what they are, you're going to quickly figure out what it is by being consistent in that. So that's your homework if you choose to accept it. And I highly recommend that you do, because it's going to give you insights into yourself. And I can promise you that if you start journaling today, a year from now, so October 11th, 2020, you are going to be a different person, and you're going to look back over that past year and you're going to see how you've grown, or you're going to see where you were stuck, or you're going to see what the pain that you went through and that you've either recovered from, or you'll remind yourself of like, oh crap, yeah, I started to do that and then I stopped. So very, very helpful. Highly recommend that you journal. Moving on to the next question. And I'm super excited about this one, actually. I'm writing a fan fiction on Wattpad. Go you. How do I tell if my readers are still into my content or are falling out of my storyline? So the thing that people run into with fan fiction is they write really crappy fan fiction. They write everything the same. If you go to Wattpad, you're going to find dark, smutty stuff. You're going to find, especially if it's like Lord of the Rings, you're going to find Legolas being tormented in pretty much every conceivable way. You're going to find teenage angsty romance that is literally a copy and paste of someone else. But I'm going to talk to Lord of the Rings writers specifically here, since that's the type of fan fiction that I write. Everyone, almost everyone, 99.9% of people who are writing fan fiction for Lord of the Rings write it in the third age. They just rehash the same story. And I get it, because I've done it. It's fun to imagine yourself, or you imagine your character in the Fellowship. The problem that you run into is that the diehard Lord of the Rings fans are a very fickle bunch. They want fan fiction that is canon. It kind of messes with the entire purpose of fan fiction, because it's supposed to be different. So that's why I chose to write in Tales of the Fourth Age, because it happens after all of that stuff. So it's new to the reader. I would love it if someone actually wrote some quality. Well, actually, I know someone who writes high quality Silmarillion fan fiction, and it is awesome. A Different Kind of Heaven by Silmarils 1709. If you guys haven't read it, go read it. It will seriously blow your freaking mind. So how do you know if they're falling out of the storyline? Is anybody commenting? Like, if there's no one commenting, or your reads aren't growing, that's a pretty good indication that you've lost somebody. And it's hard to speak to all of the different fandoms that there are, but if you are not seeing your reads go up, if you're not seeing people adding it to their list, which is a catch-22, because just because it's added to a list doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to read it. I have a huge library and I have not touched it in months. So there's that. But if you're not getting reads and you're not getting votes, most people don't like to vote, so it's on the same range as adding to the list. But especially if you're not getting comments, if you don't have a solid base of people that are leaving comments that are truly enjoying your story, then you may have an issue somewhere with the storyline. It's either too generic, and so someone's going to be like, well, I've already read this. Like, I've written this. There's not anything different. There's not anything new about it. You could be running into that. So if you're running into that, what you need to do is you need to ask your reader base, how many followers do you have? And maybe create a post within that book and keep it up for a period of time, or do a shout out, but ask your reader base to be like, hey, I feel like I've lost you guys. Where was it that I lost you? Was it the storyline? Was it the plot? Was it the characters? Where's the disconnect happening? And then if you go directly to them, you're actually going to find out what the heck it is that you did to lose them in the first place, rather than trying to guess. That would be my recommendation. And that goes for if you have an original novel as well. If you're posting on Wattpad and you're not getting reads and you're not getting people commenting on it consistently, and I'm talking like a handful of people, because really you just need a handful of people to know that your story is connecting, because those people will tell other people about it. You can also post it in the forum. You can only access the forum, last I was aware, through a desktop. So through your computer, your laptop, maybe a tablet. I don't have one, so I don't know. But if you post it in the forum, advertise it, talk to people about it. Ask people like, hey, I need advice. Would you come and read, X amount of chapters and tell me, is it good? Good is subjective. Don't ask them if it's good. Ask them if you like, just read these chapters and then give your honest opinion. That's all that I would ask, is just give me your honest opinion on it. Be prepared, because there's always going to be someone in the bunch who is just like, this is garbage. Yeah. Don't listen to them. Find the average. If someone's like, hey, I really liked this, but this lost me, those are the type of people that you want to really take the feedback from, not the ones that are just ripping your story to shreds, because all that means is that it's not their cup of tea. They're not normally doing reading in that particular fandom, so they have no idea. And if they don't know at least the basics of it, why are you asking them? Find people in the fandom to read it, critique it, and give you feedback. That would be my suggestion for you. Don't go asking for opinions that you really don't want, because they don't know what it is that they're talking about. It's like me going to a beta reader for my fantasy novel, and they only read Amish romance. That would be the equivalent. They have no idea what the fantasy is. All they have read is Amish romance. So they're not going to be able to give me accurate feedback on what it is that I'm looking for. Also, I write YA. So I'm not going to go to a 50-year-old and ask them, is this enjoyable? Now, do I want it to be enjoyable for someone of that age range? Yes. But is that my target demographic? No. So I'm going to find people in that YA age range to give me feedback as a beta reader. So hopefully that all makes sense. and that will help you figure out and kind of diagnose like where you're losing people. Let's see. So next question: can writing down and keeping track of bad habit triggers help you? Yes, it can. And this actually kind of pairs really nicely with journaling. I didn't notice it initially when I was setting it up, but when you're doing journaling consistently and you're writing down those things, or if you notice like, "Ah, man, I did this again," unless you're being very self-aware, which most people are not, um, then you're not going to know to write down a bad trigger. If you are that little bit of self-aware and you're going, okay, this is a habit pattern that I noticed, so I'm going to track it and find out what it is that causes me to do that. Maybe you write something, um, you feel like your worst writing is after you have a snack, and you are marking down when it is you have a snack and how it correlates to your writing. And you realize like, oh wow, this is actually hindering my ability to write because I spend so much time trying to find the perfect snack. For me, I have little bags of pretzel chips over there, and I had Pop Tarts, but I ate all those. You know, those are the kinds of things. If you keep track of them, you're eventually going to figure out what the habit pattern is. And once you have established, like, okay, this is the bad habit pattern when it comes to writing, how do I change it? That is when you start actively figuring out ways to combat it. So if you're like, well, I spend 20 minutes trying to figure out a snack and I waste all my writing time, then the counter to it would be create a 30-minute buffer between the time that you need to get a snack and start writing, because then you're using up that 20 minutes to figure out the snack, and then you have 10 minutes left to sit down and prepare yourself for writing. I talk about this in my scheduling, my creating a writing process, scheduling out your writing time. That is a similar concept here, is that once you've figured out the bad habit, mine would be rushing from thing to thing. And it was just like, okay, so I'm doing this, and then I'm doing this, and then I'm doing this, and then I'm doing this. There was no breathing room. There was no breathing room between those. So the way that I combated that was I added a 30-minute buffer between every single thing that I do. And what I found was it made me more efficient. It made me more productive because I'm switching between tasks and it allows my brain to switch. Very similar concept here. Once you have figured out the bad habit pattern, you look at it and go, okay, what can I do to combat it? If it's simply adding a buffer time, add a buffer time. If it's eating snacks before bed, maybe you're eating a heavier dinner before that, and you try and get yourself feeling full before bed. Those are examples of ways you can combat the bad behaviors or correct them. And it's simply just a matter of being aware of them in the first place. And tracking that, journaling them is a great way to start doing that. All right. So moving on to, but just before we move on to the next question, if you guys haven't already, make sure that you go down and subscribe. If you hit the like button, it really, I'm not going to be offended if you don't. It just helps the channel. It just helps more people find, these videos, the other content that I'm creating. But I'm not going to be personally offended if I don't get a ton of likes. I'm here for you guys, not for likes. And if you don't know, or if you're just joining, I have worksheets available. You can see them right here. Those are the prettier versions. I have the downloadable versions on my website, theeditingbar.com. If you subscribe, you can see that I'm really bad at doing this. If you subscribe, you get the first 3 for free: brainstorming, outlining, and character creation. I'm really bad at self-promoting, guys. I just am. But I have to let you know, because if you don't know, you don't know. And then if you don't know, you can't write. That's what I tell myself. Is that you guys couldn't write without me. And this right here is the best part of your Friday. Okay, before I embarrass myself any farther, I'm going to move on to the next question, which is what are some writing tips on showing, not telling? Get this question a lot with my clients, because I usually will call them out on that when it's like, doing too much telling here. Very rarely do I have to tell someone they're showing too much. It's usually that they're telling. That is our normal default when we talk, is we tell. We don't really describe much of anything because we're trying to get to the point. I, however, am very verbose and will take forever to get to a point, as you can see. So a good example of this is that in a story, you could say, she died slowly. Might be accurate, but that's telling. You could say, she faded away and I watched the light dim in her eyes. That is showing. Showing is being descriptive. Telling is using pretty much anything that ends with an ly most of the time. Adverbs, of the devil, kind of that kind of stuff. Like, adverbs have their place. But in the body of a text and outside of dialogue, it can weaken the sentence. It can weaken the description of what's going on. You can say, he ran fast. Okay, what is fast? Give some more description, like he covered ground in the blink of an eye. So I mean, we're talking. So it's saying he ran fast, but in a blink of an eye. Those are the kinds of descriptions that can help you show rather than tell. Trying to think of another example that I had, or that I had seen just recently. Blanking on it. Had it and then was gone. This is what happens when I only have one thing of coffee. Like, this is pretty big, but I only had one of these, and apparently that is not enough to get my brain up to full functionality. So showing, not telling is a good way to go. Now you can be overly showy, and it turns into purple prose. Be like, the autumn leaves were red and gold, reflecting the amber sunlight of the setting sun that cast purple shadows across the mountains. And it's like, descriptive, beautifully descriptive, too much. There are instances where telling is better than showing. But also you can show by breaking it up a bit. So instead of having be, the autumn leaves, blah, 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 and the purple mountains, you do the autumn leaves were golden in the amber sunlight of the setting sun. And I turned and I looked around at the majesty around me, the purple mountains, the glittering rivers, like those kind. If you break it up, so it's not just like one run-on thing, that is a better way to go when showing. When to find when you're telling, look at the sentence and that ends with or that has an ly, or there's an action, like, she was slowly dying. Look at something like that and go, can I make it more descriptive? Is there a better word? Is there a stronger word that I could use here? Fading. The light was dimming. Those types of descriptors give a more powerful emotional reaction than slowly does. So that would be my recommendation for you guys for that one, because it depends so much upon. And if I had an example, if I had a way to like show you guys, I would do that. And maybe that'll be a future video. where I actually take the time and I screencast it so you guys can actually see what it is that I'm talking about and give some better examples. Because right off the top of my head, I'm on the struggle bus, real big on the struggle bus with that one, without being able to show you some examples. Again, if you have questions, make sure that you're putting them in the chat. The chat is open, and just because I have stuff to talk about does not mean that I want to miss out on the opportunity to answer questions that you have regarding editing, writing, journaling, just being an author in general. Let me know. So this one is a bigger question, and since I'm writing a fantasy series, I had to go for it. So fantasy book series. Would it be better to establish the world and magic system in the first book and explore the minor details as the story needed them, or to establish a little bit of magic system in the world throughout all the books? The answer would be yes. We're done. No, I'm just kidding. So let's address the first part. Establish the world and magic system in the first book and explore minor details as the story needs them. Yes, you should absolutely be establishing some of the world and magic system in the first book. You do, or the first trilogy, or however you're setting it up for your particular series. But you should be establishing something in that first book that gives them the ability to, it gives the reader something to grab a hold of, right? Because we're creating worlds. World building is where authors tend to struggle the most, because it's either there's too much or there's too little, right? So it's trying to find that happy balance between the two. And you want to have, addressing the second question, the second part of that question, is you want to leave some mystery. So maybe you don't answer every single question about your world in the first book. You leave some mystery to be discovered in the second, third, fourth, fifth book. For example, with the fantasy series that I'm writing, I'm establishing a lot of stuff in the first book, because this is going to be 12 books in all. In the first one, I'm establishing where a particular power or magic source comes from. I'm establishing creatures. And while there's not a ton of descriptions, and while some of the creatures they're not going to run into over the course of I'd say probably the first 2 books, maybe some more in the third, I'm establishing that those creatures exist. So while they may not run into them directly, I'm establishing that they exist so that the reader is aware of it. But there's some mystery to it. There is so there's 3 major continents that I've sketched out for this series. And the far west continent has a lot of these creatures, and there's rumors of dragons to the east on the other continent, because no one that goes there ever returns. And those that, I guess, have gotten close enough but kind of watched the other ship get destroyed, they were like, nah, nope, don't want none of that. We're heading back. Those ones came back, told these grand stories. And then, of course, you have the adventurers that are just like, I can do it. And they go get burned alive. So I'm creating a mythos, a lore, history, legends, all of these different kinds of things within the first book that set up things that will happen later, or things that I can bring into play later, but I'm not going into detail about them. Those will have their time later on in the book. So as you are building your fantasy series, you have to think about the long term, the mystery, the adventure, the magic. Like I have three, four. I think I have four different types of magic in this book, and each one is like you'll kind of delve into one more heavily than another, and like in the first book, it's Christian fantasy. So the power that the main characters have to create the white flame is because of their connection and their relationship to God. It's the gift that He gives them, is the ability to wield that, and it's extremely powerful. But you also have the banshees, who they have a different type of magic system that is more centered around creating thoughts or feelings of desire, because they're kind of like banshee, succubus um, type creatures. So they lure men out by using their own desires against them. So it's not like a full blown magic system, but they have these magical powers and capabilities. And then there's the Sorcerer's Academy, and they tap into the natural gifting of magic that is prevalent in the world. That is, again, it's a gift from God, but it's people taking it and they've used it for their own purposes. And so, just like we do with in real life, we take good things and then we kind of twist them into something that sometimes, more often than not, ends up in failure or ends up being bad and hurting other people at the expense of getting this power. And that's kind of what their philosophy is like, well, we know that people have this power, so we're going to exploit it. So those are the kind of the different systems, but I don't delve into every single one of those systems. I don't go into explaining them, mainly because there's no hard and fast rules that they have to follow. There are consequences for magic use, which I won't go into because of spoilers, but those things are things that I explore and will explore throughout the series, because this is setting up the other two trilogies that will take place. Two trilogies? Three? This one? That one? That one? Ooh, I think that's four trilogies. Yeah, four. Yeah, four. Duh. Okay, I cannot math this morning, but I'm setting it up for the entire series, and a lot of it is that you see here is going to come into play in later books. But I'm going to be describing them more in detail kind of as I go through. So when you're doing that kind of world building, do both. You need to establish some set rules, some set these are the promises that you're making, and you need to follow through on throughout the world building process, and to be consistent, because nothing pisses readers off more than when someone is being inconsistent with their world building. And then keep some a mystery and reveal it little bits at a time, purposefully, not just because you feel like the story needs it, but because there's a specific purpose behind it, because that adds weight to it. Okay, so that's all I'm going to get into on that one, because I could seriously go into talk about forever. I've broken down world building into the 4 C's: creatures, cultures, creation, and conflict, which part of that is going to be in the curriculum that I'm building for the more robust world building curriculum for the Bard Storytelling Academy. And I'll probably do some lighter videos on YouTube eventually. Well, I have some of them already recorded. So you guys could look forward to that in the future. Next question is it better to plan a story out before you start writing or go with the flow of the novel? So essentially, whether you outline or you pants is kind of the question here. That is a very, very broad question, and it really depends on who you are as a writer and where you're at in your writing, and really what feels the most comfortable to you. I used to be, because this is what I was told, that you need to outline. You need to outline everything to know how the story is going to go. And what I ended up doing when I did that was I took all of these ideas and I started writing them out. And then I ended up writing chapters. And so it was super frustrating because I was like, I haven't even gotten through the story yet. That's when I plotted my story to the ground and I was like, I can't do this. And I took a step back from it. And then I pantsed my Lord of the Rings fan fiction books. Now, the fifth book, which I am halfway done with, and I had to stop last year because of my shoulder injury, I actually had to sit down and I had to use the milestone method to figure out how all of the threads, because I decided to add like some 13 characters to it because, I need to lose more hair. And I was like, I have to make this all work. And so I had a whiteboard was just full of these different little milestones that I had to do in order to connect it all. But I had pantsed everything up to that point. The 50,000 words that I wrote this year for my first draft, I pantsed all of them. I had no plot. Get that? No plot whatsoever. I had a story idea and I had a title. That's it. That's all I had. And I started writing. I said, we'll see what happens. And I was like, hey, main character, she's running. From what? I don't know. People are trying to shoot her with muskets, though. Cool. Don't know what's going to happen now. Move along. So it was really, that's how it started. So, and I was only able to do that because I gave myself restrictions. I gave myself a spectrum to work on. 1,750 to 2,500 words per chapter for the first draft is what I settled on. And that is part of how I've built my writing process. That's part of what I teach all of my coaching clients as part of their writing process is to adapt, because consistency is the king when it comes to writing. It's not necessarily plotting everything out. It's not knowing in advance all of the things, all of the characters, all the plants, the fauna, the creatures, the conflicts, the kingdoms, the magic systems. Need I go on? You don't have to know all of those things before you start writing. You don't. You have to be consistent with writing, because as you become more and more consistent with it, you're going to naturally develop those things as you go. Now, you may get to the point where, as I do, I use the milestone method to plan out the big picture of the book, because I need to know, I like to know roughly what events do I want to take place, and they're the big events, and I don't go into detail about them. So, like if you looked at my milestone method for this book, it would be beginning, inciting conflict, which is the main character Trinia is running from her dad, who's a psychopath and a pervert, and she's trying to escape his grasp because he wants to use her world-destroying powers to conquer the rest of the world and destroy it and remake it in his image. She doesn't want to do that. Middle part is where, and I'm not going to get any farther than that because of spoilers, but in the middle part, or in between that and the middle part, you would see the different big events that I want to have happen. So she runs into the other main character. She runs into the Udar, who is one of the like main characters next to her. I have 6 main characters, but heroes and villains, but they differ greatly in how much they are used. So it's those events, and then the middle pivot point, which is like, okay, this is where I need to start transitioning towards the end. Those big events, and then how I want to end it to set up the next book. Everything in between those markers is up to my imagination to write. So I could be on 3 different side quests before I get to the middle part. That's okay. I could get to one of those and be like, you know what, story has changed enough to where I don't need this anymore. And so I need to reevaluate the next 2 markers, depending on how much the story has changed. And then I reevaluate. But I do that as I go. I don't know it all in advance. I was like, okay, here's the big picture. I start writing. And then as I go, I figure it out. Okay, this might not work anymore. Throw it out or move it somewhere else. Maybe it'll work out better later. That is the kind of stuff that you can do when you are starting off writing. You don't need to plan it all out beforehand. If you like that structure, then do it. I am by no means telling you that my way is the right way for you to do it. But I would encourage you, because I've noticed a lot of authors have trouble with that middle section of their book. And those that have that trouble are usually the ones that have plotted everything out to a T. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. The middle part is where I have the most fun because it's up in the air. I can do as much or as little as I want. It's usually too much, which is where the editing part comes in. But I can have side quests. I can have plot twists. I can add all of these different adventures in the middle part of the book that make it exciting. But it all moves the story forward towards the ending that I have decided for it. And if the ending changes based on these different things, then I can simply rearrange it. So that is my recommendations for you. I'm not telling you how to write, but I'm telling you what's worked and what I've noticed. And the people that have used the milestone method have had the most success with writing their whole book. Okay, so we have 8 minutes left and we're on to the last question. I gotta say, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I had 9 questions. I had 11, but I cut a couple of them out because they were kind of redundant. But for getting these done in an hour is pretty good. Okay, and this one I'm super excited about, so I need to hurry. What are some sensible first steps to take when building an online audience for your writing? I just spoke with some of my other coaching clients about this. I'm going to try not to rush through it because I am caffeinated. So I do not recommend starting to build your audience until you've entered at least your second draft. That is because when you start writing your book, you're super excited about it. You're like, yes, this is it. This is going to be my something opus. Man, that really killed the mood right there. I was on it. Magnum opus. I think that's what the word I'm looking for is. Your life's work. Like this is it. Like you're excited. You're like, oh, yes. And then you get to the end of it, and whether you've had a developmental editor look at it or whether you've gone through and done a self-developmental edit, and you're like, wow, this is no, this is not what I had in mind for my story at all. And things end up changing. That happened with mine. I went through and I was like, this is what my book is going to be about. And then I went through and I actually did my worksheet for the plot. I did the plot donut worksheet. And I was like, holy crap, I am way off of where I was thinking that I was going to be. Reevaluated. Now I can tell you exactly what the book is going to be about. I can't because of certain spoilers. I've given you guys plenty of information, though, to at least tantalize and tease you for a while. But when you get to the second draft of your book and you have a better idea of what it is, then what I recommend you start doing is building your author platform. You do not need to have a website. You could, if you wanted to, you could do something. You could do the free version of Wix. If you know a little bit of coding, you could do WordPress. Um, you could do Squarespace. I mean, there's lots of different websites that you can use. I personally use Wix for my business, but you can get a following started on social media. Figure out where your audience is. Who is your audience, right? That's really where you have to start, is who is your audience? I know that my audience is YA, and the vast majority of my readers are between the ages of 15 and 19. Some of them are upwards of 25. That seems to be the biggest demographic. And if I look at my analytics, like 75% of them are female, and then the remaining 25% are male. So I know that if that is who my target audience is, then I need to ask myself, where are they at? So most of them, Instagram. That's where I get most of, or excuse me, Instagram, uh, Twitter is another one, and Facebook. Facebook is kind of more for family, friends, and you can kind of build an audience on there. It's not necessarily going to grow quite as much unless you have really honed in and dialed in on who your target audience is. Because, like I said, if you don't know who it is, you need to start there first before you ever consider starting your building your author platform. Because not everybody's going to read your book, and you don't want to market to the people who are not going to read your book. So, if you're writing a romance novel, and you are in science fiction groups, they're not going to read your book. It's not their jam. You have to really figure out, who do you want to target, where can they be found, and then go there. So I know that a lot of my target audience for my business is aspiring authors who want to bring their story to life. They have the idea, they just don't know how to do it. They've never written a book before. And so they need some guidance. That's who I target for my coaching, because those are the people that I want to help, because I relate most to those people. I was where they're at now, back when I was their age. Most of them are younger, so anywhere between usually like 18. And then I think the oldest client that I've had is in their 60s. But that's kind of the age range. But those people are the ones that I want to help the most. If you're writing your novel and you're very visually oriented, then Instagram is going to work great, because it's all about pictures, quotes, inspirational sayings, all that kind of stuff. Instagram is great for that. If you are more of wanting to connect with a writing community that is, at least that I've found to be a little bit more active, Twitter is a great place to post snippets of your day, snippets of your writing life, using the hashtag writing community on Twitter. I've gotten thousands of followers. Now, some of them, they probably never read my stuff, and I'm totally fine with that. I'm not worried about the numbers. I look at where my audience is and how I can reach them. Facebook is great if you want to build a personal brand around your book. So I have 2 clients right now who they've started author pages, and I was like, invite people in. If you really want to build your audience before you publish your book, and you want it to be more personalized, you don't want to be disconnected or just post pictures or just post quippy sayings, and you really want to get personal, Facebook is the way to go. And you can invite people in. So you're posting some pictures, some quippy sayings on Facebook, but you're inviting them in on the journey. Regardless, you're saying like, hey guys, this is what I'm writing today, and like, I was super excited about it. If you get them to invest emotionally, they are going to be more likely to buy your book when it actually comes time to purchase it. So keep that in mind. If you're more business oriented, LinkedIn is going to be the place to go. Um, my people are not on LinkedIn, so I don't really post on LinkedIn. My people I know congregate on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Those are where my people are. Those are where the indie authors hang out that I want to connect with. Aside from my business, I want to help them through my business, which is why I'm building the Bard Storytelling Academy, because I want to help aspiring authors. But my writing tribe is primarily on Twitter, and that's where I connect with a lot of them. So figure out where your people are, and then if you start off on either one of those sites, your goal should be to get them on a mailing list for your book. And you can use that through a website. It does not need to be fancy. It does not need to have multiple pages. It could literally be 2 pages or just one really big, long homepage where you say, this is who I am. This is what my book is about. If you want to follow me on my journey, then connect with me here and sign up for the email list. It's just, oh my goodness, excuse me. It's as simple as that. And you just invite people on the journey. That people want authenticity. People crave authenticity in a day and age where, all we talk at is at a screen. That is how we communicate with each other. Like, we're on our phones, we're on our computers, we're in our own little bubbles, and we want to connect with people. That's why we do it. So if you can play to that and invite people in, not say, hey, I think you'll like my book. I get spam like that all the time on Twitter. Like, hey, I think you'll be interested in my book. That's spam. Don't spam people. Don't DM or message or, do anything like that to promote your book. Don't do that. Don't be that person, because that is going to get deleted. That is what's going to happen there. Is I'm going to delete it. There, whoever you sent it to is probably going to delete it. What you do is you post and you invite. You post and you invite. You say, if you want, join. If you want, join. Because the people that are interested will join. The people that want to follow, that want to emotionally invest, those are the people you want to attract. You do not want to attract everybody. Some people are not going to care about what it is that you're writing. They might be interested for a few minutes and then they'll unfollow you. Don't worry about it. It quite literally does not matter whether they like you or not, because the people who are going to read your book and that you are going to connect with, those are your people. And you focus on them. Forget everyone else. It's not that they don't matter as individuals, but in terms of your business, your book, they don't matter. So don't focus on them. Don't sell to them. Sell to your people. Figure out who your people are. Invite. Invest. Because when it comes time for you to publish your book, you will have a dedicated following of people who are invested and who are ready to promote your book for you because they feel like they've been a part since the beginning. That is how you build an effective author platform. All right, guys, I've gone a little bit over, and I want to first off just thank you so much for joining me on today's live stream. If you have any questions, for those of you who are watching this afterwards, please feel free to comment down below. I will answer them. I'm not going to be one of those YouTubers who does not answer to anybody who comments. So comment down below. And again, you will find more information about me, about some of the tools that I recommend to authors. And if you haven't already, I think it's on this side, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell icon so that way you know when I go live and when I am updating. It's every Friday. It's either going to be a live stream or it's going to be new video content. And I got more stuff coming your way. So I look forward to talking with you guys again soon. Have a wonderful weekend and take care.